Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this LRIG Early Career Professional webinar. We've called Beyond the Lab, Careers Translating Science into IP and Business Strategy. Thank you for joining us today, and upfront, thank you to our panelists for giving up their time as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Suave. I'm a member of the Early Career Professional Work Group, and I'm also a principal scientist at a biotech company in Oxford called OMAS Therapeutics. So if you haven't been to an LRIG event before, I thought I'd start with a bit of who LRIG is and what the Early Career Professional Work Group is before opening up to our panel for the discussion. So LRIG is a not-for-profit organization bringing life science and drug discovery community together with high quality science in a way to learn and innovate, collaborate on an open access basis. The community is about 22,000 scientists representing all sectors across the life science and drug discovery community. So from big pharma, biotech, across to products and services, and indeed our legal side as well, as you'll hear today. One central tenet and pillar of LRIG is that all of the events are free to attend and they are supported by our vendors. As a cross-section of the community, we really represent the full spectrum of the life science industry. So we have, as I mentioned before, big pharma, biotech and CRO, as well as colleagues in academia and charities, as well as people who work in roles that support the life sciences work as well. As this is an ECP, so an early career professional webinar, I'm proud to say that a third of our community defines itself as an ECP, and you can look on LRIG's website for the definition there. Geographically, about 75% of the community is based in the UK, and we have a growing presence in Europe, and you can see a percentage as well in the US as well. We are proud of our DE&I initiatives as well, and we're delighted that we have a 50-50 gender balance as well, and 35% of our community identify as non-white and 3% with a disability. So we feel that our community is a dynamic mix of research scientists and people who are involved in life science and drug discovery across the spectrum, and we're really representative of that community. We're driven by values and purpose as well. I'm not going to read it out verbatim, but safe to say that our values and our central guiding purpose is the whole reason for LRIG's existence as well, and we're always driven by that. I mentioned that we put on various events and conferences, all of which are free to attend. This is a snapshot of what's happening this year in 2026. These are our main conferences and forums that we have. So this doesn't count the webinars like what we're doing today, but these are the kind of in-person events that we have dotted around. You can see locations in the UK, in Germany, in Sweden, in America as well. So if anything that you see here looks interesting and is new to you, I'd encourage you to go onto the LRIG website and sign up. As I said, it's all free to attend, and it'd be great to have you there. There's something there for everybody. A little bit about the Early Career Professional Work Group. So LRIG is a not-for-profit organization primarily run by volunteers, effectively, members like myself, who give up our time to help bring events such as this to all of you. You can see here, these are the members of our work group and with our affiliations in the brackets here. What this represents is like our community, a cross-section of pharma, biotech, CROs, academia, as well as local governments as well. And our chair of our Early Career Professional Work Group is an academic at the University of Glasgow called Elaine Duncan. We have a lot of fun putting on these events as well. You can see on the top left of the screen, there's a few of us there enjoying a drink round at a conference. This is not by no means the only type of event that we put on. There's lots of that happen in person at our conferences, such as the Big Drug Discovery Conference. But there's also a host of webinars that we have recorded, such as these that are all available on the LRIG website as well. So again, I'd just encourage you to have a look on the website if any of this has added value to you. So without further ado, before I start, I will just mention that we are going to be speaking with each of our panelists one by one before opening it up to a general panel discussion at the end. If you do have questions along the way, you should see that there is a questions and answers or a Q&A button on Zoom. Please put any questions that you have in there. Don't use the chat because they will get lost if you use the chat. So any questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and I'd encourage you to do that as we're going along with the webinar. Don't feel that you have to wait until the end of a particular panelist or the end of a particular section before we do it. We'll get to them all at the end, and it's great if we have a great list of questions to go through. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel. So we have Laura Dixon, we have Caleb Bates, Elizabeth Crawford, and Melvin Ansell. And like I said, because it's this online format, we'll just be going through each person one by one. Otherwise, we'll be back and forth on Zoom spotlighting and unspotlighting. So Melvin, if we could perhaps start with you, please. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the panel, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
And yeah, thank you very much, Melvin. And perhaps we could start by you just saying, you're a patent attorney at Secerna, but perhaps you could just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, so my name's Dr. Melvin Ansell. As Mark rightly says, I'm a UK and European patent attorney at Secerna. So we're a IP firm based in York and Newcastle. My background is in chemistry, and I work with a lot of companies ranging from startups to SMEs to multinational companies, helping protect patents in the pharma space and also developing intellectual property strategies.
Thanks very much, Melvin. That's great to hear. And obviously, so you're based in York, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I guess but you interact with companies across the UK and Europe, right? So how do you manage those relationships across such a broad geography?
I think it's relatively easy, actually. I think the language of science is universal. So I think language tends not to be an issue. And I think you just have to be aware of different cultures, perhaps, if you are dealing with companies and people from different countries.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. I was curious, what does a typical day look like for you? I'm sure no 2 days are exactly the same, but I wonder if we could have a little snapshot as to what goes on day to day for yourself.
Of course. You're right. They're very different day to day. I have a client at the minute that's developing a new drug and they're moving at pace. So they're going through clinical trials. And a lot of what I'm doing with them at the minute is things like freedom to operate, due diligence for funding, protecting their innovations with patents. So, I mean, that can be a single day in itself. My role more recently has shifted slightly towards business development as well. So it's moved slightly away from the patent work, but to bring in sort of chemical and pharma work. That's interesting. I get to attend events like LRIG Drug Discovery, which I attended last year. So yeah, it's very, very broad, very varied, which is part of the reason I like the job, to be honest.
Amazing. No, that's yeah. I'm really getting a sense of the variety, let's say, that can be on offer a day to day. I mean, but you said your background was, you did your PhD in medicinal chemistry, and that's kind of, I guess, what your bread and butter was beforehand. I wonder if you could shed light on how much of the background knowledge that you were able to transfer over from your training, from all your research in medicinal chemistry, how much of that transferred over, and how were you able to apply that to your role now?
Good question. So yeah, my PhD, I mean, an aspect of it was medicinal chemistry. So I was tasked to develop new catalysts to produce sort of starting materials for the pharma sector. So it was a lot of the stuff I did was some of it was air sensitive chemistry, some of it was organic synthesis. So it's quite broad, it's quite varied. In terms of day to day now, I guess I still see some of that. It's nice to see sort of some of the stuff I worked on come through, particularly the catalysis side of things. But day to day, actually, it can be varied. I mean, one of the cases I worked on was a chemical coating for a toilet. So it goes from that to sort of the hardcore pharmaceutical drug development processes, and so again, it's varied and it doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily that my PhD is now the content I had did and the work and research I did in my PhD is necessarily useful now. It's more the transferable skills that I got from that. So the problem solving, the writing skills is one big thing in the patent industry as well. That's a very good skill to have. Yeah.
No, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. I wonder, just kind of expanding on the transferable skill side and particularly in the writing side of things, are there any nuances, I guess, to writing for a patent or writing it as a patent attorney that you necessarily didn't get from the PhD and that you had to learn along the way, and might be good for anybody who's thinking about, a career in patent law, to, point them in the right direction.
That's a good question. So I don't know if perhaps most of your audience have seen patents before. It's a very different language, and I have to say, actually, before I started the role, I didn't really come across patents very much in my studies. So the language itself I learned on the job. But I think it's the attention to detail that making sure phrasing was correct, punctuation worked well, things like that that I developed as a PhD student transferred well into my role as a patent attorney now. But the rest I kind of learned on the job, which is quite nice. You don't need to have a legal background. I guess that would be one of the questions many will probably ask today. Um, you just need a scientific degree to be able to a STEM degree to be able to do the role. So
No, that's great. Thank you. It's funny, as soon as you mentioned that, suddenly one of the questions just came up. We
oh,
will get to
excellent.
that in good time as well, because I think it's important to not necessarily debunk, but I guess shed light on some of the misconceptions that people may have, or the preconceived conceptions, maybe would be a better way of phrasing it, around that. And yeah, as you rightfully said, having that background is important. And I guess the transferable skills in terms of the attention to detail and everything as well, I guess, comes in really handy as well for the day to day.
100%. I think the thing that I most valued from my PhD experience was the problem solving skills, because you'll know well that research sometimes doesn't work, so you have to figure out why that is, what you can do to fix that, and then try and press forward, and that works the same in the patent attorney field as well.
That's really good. And I guess how much of that is like a collaboration between yourself and the clients, and how much of it is you kind of suggesting things for the clients to go away and do? Like, how much of it is a two-way street as opposed to, just you being like, I can only inform so much, but ultimately it's for you to figure out.
Um, there's definitely collaboration there. That the client is the scientist who is the expert in the area, so you do rely on them to be able to tell you what it is, but you need to quickly understand the technology, and then be able to put that in a way that protects what they ultimately want to protect. So it is a lot of collaboration, I think, but also I will need to go away and think about it myself. So it's a bit of both.
Oh, that's fab. And just maybe to wrap up then, if you had one salient piece of advice, I guess, to pass on to our wonderful audience, what would be your piece of wisdom to pass on?
I think one thing that has served me well and continues to do so is being curious. I think as you transition from a child to being an adult, you can tend to lose that as a skill, and I think it is a skill. So always be curious, and I think that will get you through in most things.
That's brilliant. No, thank you very much, Melvin. And yeah, thank you for your advice as well, moving forward. I think curiosity is for sure the biggest driver of everything that we do in well, in science, I guess, in general, not just in drug discovery, but definitely in drug discovery as well. Thank you very much, Melvin. It's my pleasure now to introduce Elizabeth Crawford. So welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you for being here today. So Elizabeth is Senior Business Development Manager at Icon. And Elizabeth, I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got to your role today. And I know you've had many different roles in the past as well. A little bit about your career progression as well, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, as you said, I'm a business development manager at Icon. So, Icon, just to give a little bit of an overview, is the Infection Innovation Consortium. So, we're a consortium of academic and industry partners who have come together to support companies in the infectious disease space. So, we host different research platforms which are run by various of the consortium partners. The lead consortium partner, just to say, is Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. So a lot of the research platforms are based there, and it's really about facilitating access to academic expertise, to facilities that the consortium members might have, and to support those companies in their any stage of their drug development or diagnostic development, and so any technologies really in infectious disease. So to give a little bit of background of where I've how I've sort of ended up in this role. So I did a degree in pharmacology originally, and as part of that, I did a sandwich year at a company called Cambridge Antibody Technology, which was subsequently taken over by AstraZeneca, but it was a good sized biotech company at the time, and that really gave me a good exposure to what goes on in those companies. I saw various aspects of preclinical development as well as clinical development, but also access to people who were doing business development roles, developing collaborations, and really understanding kind of all those different things which contribute to making a successful company. And then when I went back to university, I then decided to go on and do a PhD, which I was also working then with AstraZeneca as part of that, and that was in molecular biology. And then also during that time, I took part in a competition called Biotech Yes, which was a young entrepreneur scheme, which I'm sure many of you have come across. And that was really instrumental in sort of opening my eyes to thinking about entrepreneurialism and thinking about how how do you apply science and to real world translation, and how can what kinds of careers could you sort of think about maybe away from the lab, because as Melvin said before, research doesn't always go well, and that was probably the case in my PhD. So I probably knew that I needed to think about careers outside the lab. So when I finished my PhD, I decided I came across a role of technology transfer, and that's where I started off. And I got a job at what was called the UMIP, which is now the Innovation Factory at the University of Manchester. And that initial role that I had was it was called commercialization executive, and the job really was going around talking to all the researchers, understanding what their research was, thinking about whether there was commercial potential there, and then helping to look at what aspects might be protectable. So trying to define inventions initially, and then working with patent attorneys to protect those at the earliest stage, or trying to work out when the right moment might be to protect that, and to manage the sometimes tension, I guess, between the academic interests of publication and the need to keep things secret that you need to do often to keep for patentability. So, and then also to look at how you might fund some of those activities, so sort of translational, mainly through grants initially, and then I moved on to a role which was managing later stage projects, and so that was a licensing and spin out role. So, and in that case we were looking for collaborative opportunities, often to license those technologies into existing companies, or to develop business plans and to move the companies move the companies outside of the university. And it was one of those opportunities that I was working on that I decided that was the opportunity to take a leap and move into the spin out company. So this was a digital health company, so it was a bit different to my scientific background, but it kind of used some of the skills in that business translational area. And so I took the decision to leave. We managed to secure the first bit of funding, which was from an angel investor, and it was quite a scary time in a way, because I went from quite a secure job to having 6 months runway of funding, and sort of had to get on with finding technical staff to develop the software that we were developing, but and really get on with trying to fundraise from VCs, look for grant opportunities, but also develop partnerships with pharmaceutical companies, which was one of the main strategy of the company. And so I joined there in 2017, and we were going along okay, and then COVID hit, and that really made us struggle in terms of fundraising. It was quite difficult to get the amount of funding that we needed to really fulfill the ambition. So after struggling along sort of financially for a while, we decided to license the IP, rather than to progress it ourselves any further. We licensed it to one of our collaborators who could take it in-house and develop it for their particular products. And at that point, I decided to leave, and I came back to this sort of academia role, which I joined Icon in 2023, and it's been really nice to get back to a more drug discovery and pharmacology type role, and that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed getting back to in the last few years. So.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's brilliant. I really get a sense of I guess the path through which you've had to go, and obviously COVID, as so many things, not least was a big disruptor for a lot of things, and obviously big change in a lot of people's lives. But it's you could see how the kind of signposts along the way that you're gathering your different experiences and the ways in which you obviously build your career as well, and working for as a founder and CEO of the spin out, as well as for the digital health company as well. You're seeing it from the other side of things, as opposed to our patent attorney colleagues on the call. You're kind of seeing, you're partnering with them to try and get that into the out into the ecosystem. I wonder, in your role at Icon, obviously as you say, you interface between the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, so related to the academic side of things, the Liverpool University, and also business partners and biotech and CROs. How do you find that kind of finding that common ground between all of the different parties? And do you find you're having to speak multiple languages to get everybody singing from the same hymn sheet? Or, it seems like it's quite a big challenge, but one that you're obviously doing incredibly successfly.
Yeah, so it can be a challenge because there's different cultures or different mindsets and different needs for those different partners. So just to give one example, I guess timescales. So in academia, the timescales are often a lot longer, and it can take longer time to get things like contracts sorted. Whereas particularly for early stage companies, time is really an imperative, because it's money, and there's so often a short timeline that they have got to work to, and they need data to be able to get the next bit of money. So I think having had that experience in a small company myself, that I can understand that, and I think that really helps in being able to sort of translate those different needs to between the different partners. But I think that's one of the things which Icon was set up to do, and really sets us a little bit apart from a traditional kind of tech transfer organization, in that we really are being that facilitator, and you have one point of contact. And also we don't usually, it's usually a collaboration, so we don't really take IP from any of the projects we're working on. Sometimes there are things that we work up ourselves, and there's IP that's developed within those projects, but typically it's about facilitation. But yeah, keep making the cultures work can be part of the challenge of the job.
But also, I guess, part of the drive that makes it so interesting as well.
Yeah.
Maybe just finishing up, if there were people in the audience who were kind of considering how do I get into that kind of business role, and as you said, it was from doing your sandwich year that you kind of got a taste for it, if you like, and then obviously your career took the path that it did. Was there anything, perhaps when you were doing your undergraduate or your PhD, that really was the nucleus of this is the spark that really drives me and what I really, really enjoy doing about it?
Yeah, I think so. I really knew that I wanted to do stuff that I could see where it would impact. So from when I was deciding what PhD to do, I wanted to make sure it was something where I could understand what therapy might be at the end of that and how that could impact people. So that was that was always the driver for me, of really wanting to be able to make an impact on people's health. I think it's never really a defined career path, and I think that's quite challenging for when people think, oh, that's the kind of thing I want to do. And I think for me, it was really being able to see what other people were doing, what aspects of that interested me, and then to try and get into that, to do extra bits in a role, expand the role that you are already in, and then that gives you added bits of experience that then opens up those other opportunities. So yeah, I think it's not a defined career path, which can make it a bit challenging in the part, and the jobs aren't always advertised. So it's more about trying to expand your existing role into the where you're interested in.
No, thank you for that, and thanks for the your candor there. I think, as well as you say, similar to Melvin talking about the translational skills, obviously that you pick up in whatever your degree or PhD or masters, whatever it is, it's kind of forming that and using that as the being aware of what you can bring with you in your CV to any new role as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
No, thanks very much, Elizabeth. I'll now have to hand over to the next panelist, but thank you for that, and we'll see you at the end as well. So now it's my pleasure to welcome Laura Dixon. So hi, Laura. Laura is a patent attorney for Potter Clarkson, again for the UK and EU. And Laura, I wondered if you could. I know that you've had a varied career path as well. I wondered if you'd be able to share that with be happy to share that with the audience as well, please.
Yeah, so I started out at the University of Sheffield doing a master's in genetics and microbiology, and then an opportunity came up in the lab that I was doing my extended research project in to do a PhD. So I carried on and I did a PhD in molecular biology, looking at gene regulation in the bacteria that causes tuberculosis. And then throughout that PhD, I kind of realized I didn't want to stay in the lab. I really wanted a permanent job, which sounds funny, but I couldn't see myself kind of going through the traditional academia route. And similar to Elizabeth, I went to the Biotech Yes competition, and there I met a patent attorney because there was an IP workshop. And I thought, oh, this aligns quite well with my skill set, my kind of natural problem solving abilities, communication, that kind of thing. So I found out more, researched the career. When I was writing up my thesis, I applied to a few trainee attorney jobs, and I also applied to become a patent examiner at the UK Patent Office. And they offered me a job. So I thought I'll do that for a few years, kind of get a good grasp of what it's like to be an examiner, basic UK law. And then I made the transition across to train as an attorney, joined Potter Clarkson in November 2019. So I've been there 6.5 years now. So yeah.
No, thank you for sharing. I guess to ask a very naive question, and apologies in advance for this because this is not my background at all. But what is the day-to-day of a patent examiner, and how does that differ then to what you're doing currently?
Yeah, so the applicant, they'll file their patent application at the UK Patent Office, and the job of the examiner there's kind of two main stages. The first one is a search phase. So in order for an invention to be patentable, it needs to be both new and have what's called an inventive step over kind of everything that's been done before. So the patent examiner will start by doing a search for all prior art. So that might be patents. It would also include kind of journal articles. They're able to search by sequences if you're kind of in the biotech field. And they'll pull up a list of kind of the most relevant documents to the invention, and then they'll do an assessment of your application, whether it meets the legal requirements. So kind of novelty, inventive steps, efficiency support, and various other criteria, and they'll issue an examination report outlining kind of all the issues. And then the patent attorney will then respond to that with kind of input from their client, making amendments if necessary, or arguing if they think they've got a strong case. And then kind of it's that iterative process until you get to a claim set that the patent office is happy to allow, and hopefully satisfies the client's commercial need as well.
No, thank you for that. And as I'm assuming then when you approached Potter Clarkson and said, I'd like to become a patent attorney, they thought fantastic, because this is somebody who's, been on the other side of things and knows the ins and outs of what the UK Patent Office are looking for. Not that your firm don't by any stretch, but you have that knowledge, you have that capacity. How have you been able to apply what you learned previously to your current role now?
Yeah, so you're right. I still kind of get colleagues coming to ask me for questions about kind of internal workings of the UK IPO and whether certain things are likely to work or how the examiner might consider it. In general, I guess it does give a few advantages. I guess, yeah, clearly having a solid kind of foundation in the key legal principles. So those topics I mentioned, novelty, inventive step, although there's some slight differences in kind of how that's applied in each of the territories, like say the legal steps that they use at the European Patent Office, they use a different legal test to the UK IPO. There's still a lot of harmony across the general principles, because obviously as a patent attorney, you're often responsible for handling kind of the worldwide family in all the different countries, not just the UK ones. So that's been useful to kind of have a basic understanding of those key concepts. The other advantage might be, so as well as kind of helping clients get patents, we also help clients attack other companies' patents to try and kind of get them either knocked out entirely or amended to something that doesn't cover what our client wants to do. And so, yeah, it's probably not surprising that the exam I scored highest in was the opposition one, where you had to attack a third-party patent. So it's kind of useful to be, used to kind of looking at patent claims, critically analyzing them, and kind of being able to kind of see the flaws in them. I guess as an ex-examiner, that comes more naturally, perhaps.
No, that's fascinating, and it's as you say, it's not by no means a passive, not passive. You are it's an active thing when you're going after attacking potential rival claims and things like that as well, and trying to protect your own patents, and from a client's point of view, protect their own IP while simultaneously kind of going on the offensive against any rival ones that may enter the sphere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and from reading a bit about your practice and everything, it has a focus on kind of the more therapeutic diagnostic side. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do a lot of kind of antibody-based things, antibody drug conjugates, cell therapies as well. I also dabble a little bit in kind of nutraceuticals and food as well. So varied, but yeah, I'd say antibodies is the largest chunk of what I do.
And obviously, it's so fast moving. I mean, all of us are involved in drug discovery and life sciences, and it's a very fast moving field, as science often is. How do you stay abreast of, that you're at the forefront of basically the new technologies and the new applications? How do you, stay abreast of all of this wealth of information that's coming out?
Yeah, I guess it's just general reading, and then also like attending events. So that's not only from like a business development perspective, but it's also about kind of keeping up to date with scientific skills. So I go to quite a lot of conferences. And also clients themselves, they'll often send, like I had a call last week with a client and they were like, oh, we're collaborating potentially with another thing. They've had a really interesting kind of article out about cardiovascular health. I'll send you a copy, and kind of so clients themselves are kind of sending interesting material to kind of keep up in the relevant spaces.
Oh, that's great. So it's as you say, being an active participant in conferences. I know, obviously, we've met at an LRIG drug discovery event, like Melvin was saying as well. And it's important, I guess, to be aware of the latest and greatest in the fields, and to have that. It's good that your employers obviously allow that time as well, because it's obviously important for them that you are, at the top of your game as well from that point of view.
And I think most people that come into the profession, they're kind of scientists by background, and they have that genuine passion and interest in science. Like that was one of the things that attracted me to the career, was being able to keep up with science and kind of the latest advances in science whilst not being at the bench itself. So it's a really good career from that side of things.
For sure, for sure. And your point that you made earlier as well about having a permanent position, I'm sure is not lost on a lot of people. Do excuse me 1 second. Sorry. Sorry, yeah. So it's a problem that or a situation, sorry, that a lot of people that may want to either looking at the short-term contracts that are available in the academic route or the relative market volatility that's in small biotech companies as well. And are faced with those potential options. But as you say, there's a whole spectrum of roles that are in, you're still able to do the fantastic science and be at the forefront of the research, but with a bit more job security and also, learning new skills, meeting new people and everything as well. That's a very important point, I think, that you mentioned there about the job security. Yeah, fantastic. So I would just say to leave the audience with like one nugget of information, what would it be maybe something about your experience from the examiner side of things that you could, shed light on for the audience that would be like a passing word of wisdom for them? That would be great. I know you mentioned you had some resources. Is that something that we might be able to share with the audience at a later time, just in the interest of time?
If anyone is interested in a career in IP, I've kind of pulled together a list of useful resources, websites, and kind of organizations that can help kind of getting your foot in the door. So yeah, Mark's got a copy of that and is happy to share it afterwards.
Yeah, and thank you again for compiling that list. I'm sure it's invaluable to the audience as well. So thank you very much, Laura, and thanks for your time. Fantastic. So we'll round up this section of the webinar by introducing Caleb Bates. Welcome, Caleb. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
Yeah, and so Caleb is head of IP at Isomorphic Labs, a company which I'm sure most people on the call have heard something about as well. So, Caleb, perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about your career so far. I know you've not been with Isomorphic the entire time, and just a little bit about your journey as to how you are in your role now.
Sure, happy to. As has been a running theme, I have a PhD in chemistry before I became a patent attorney. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm from the United States, and so the system there is a bit different. I won't go into it in detail. Suffice it to say that in the US, you actually do have to go to law school in order to be a patent attorney. So that's a very nice difference with Europe and the UK, where you don't have to go through a lot of additional schooling like you do in the US. So as Mark mentioned, I'm currently the head of IP at Isomorphic Labs. I've been here in-house in London for about 18 months now, leading the IP team and the IP strategy at ISO. Prior to that, I was in private practice, so at a large law firm based in the US for about 15 years, working largely with, I would say, small to medium-sized biopharma companies, so what you might characterize as a startup. Just working with them on building their patent portfolio, patent strategy, and supporting their business goals. So that's typically for those companies, they are developing new and interesting technologies and medicines, but they're not looking to commercialize them themselves, right? So they would want to out-license or partner with a large pharmaceutical company or be acquired. And let that commercial company with all their commercial and clinical expertise take it the rest of the way. And that's how I landed at ISO about a year and a half ago.
Thanks very much, Caleb. Yeah, it's fascinating to hear. Obviously, the regional differences that there are between, in your case, for example, between US and UK/EU law from the training point of view, but I guess as well in terms of the practice as well. Each region has its own nuances as well that you obviously and all of our colleagues on the call have to be aware of and informed about to the best of their knowledge. I wonder, having moved, as you say, into Isomorphic from being in a firm previously, how did you find that transition to kind of working, from, if you like, from the firm side of things to within that organization? And what were the unexpected kind of anything unexpected that may have come up?
Happily, not too many surprises. I think it really depends on the types of companies you work with. So I've also done some work when I was in private practice for large pharma, and you can imagine, like any company, like any large company, there's many layers and sort of a lot more walls prohibiting or preventing transfer of information. When I was in private practice, happily, I worked with companies that often only had one in-house lawyer or a small in-house legal team. And so I felt very plugged in to what was actually going on, sort of the business rationale, what was happening in the lab with the scientists. Of course, there's nothing like being internally at a company, right? So I would say all of the veils are pulled back now. I'm in, my day to day includes being in meetings with business development, thinking about looking for new partners. I might be in a scientific review meeting, might be in an IP strategy meeting. You might see a theme there too. There's a lot of meetings if you're an attorney, I think at a firm or in-house. But there's a lot of variety, which I really enjoy. It does involve quite a bit of science, but of course, the further you progress in your career, the less you do touch that, you're touching more business strategy and higher level strategy and IP issues.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate that. And I guess similar to what Elizabeth was talking about in terms of, you know, uh, just communicating with different audiences as well, as you say, in whether you're talking, with your business development colleagues or with your legal colleagues as well. I guess you have to kind of find the common ground there. And even though you're still within the same organization, it's still kind of bringing forward together and making sure that you're, you know, uh, coming upon that agreed upon path forward as well. And in terms of, without getting into the nitty gritty at ISO, because that's not what we're here for, but in terms of the where you're involved, I'm assuming it's kind of at all stages of, from the initial concept of a particular program or technology all the way through to its execution and implementation. Would that be fair to say?
No, that's exactly right. And I think that's one of the particularly interesting things about being a patent attorney is you get to see these new technologies very early in development, months, years before they ever become public information. And so you really do get to see the cutting edge of what's possible and work with those experts in their field, right? Whether it's AI, whether it's drug discovery, whatever it may be. And it's very exciting. Again, as I call myself now, 15 years into being a patent attorney, a former scientist. I don't feel like I can really call myself a scientist anymore. I haven't run a column in 15 years or more. So, but being able to work with those folks on a daily basis is very interesting and very rewarding, certainly.
That's very kind of you to say, and I'm sure if the column was there in front of you, I'm sure it would be like riding a bike as well.
No promises.
No, that's yeah. But in terms of, I guess you mentioned your day to day being varied. That is certainly a kind of recurring theme from everybody that's spoken today, and I guess is a key driver behind what makes what you do so fascinating and interesting. Um, for anybody who's kind of on the call thinking this is great, but how do I get into the kind of legal side at a company like Isomorphic or a big pharma company or something like that? What would you what would be your words of advice for them?
Well, I think there's two parts. So one is more general advice. I really liked what Melvin said earlier about being curious, right? Being a lifelong learner. That's very important. But sort of secondarily to that, go out and meet people, ask questions, right? Whatever career path you do choose, that will serve you well. Particularly if you wind up being an attorney, that network can be very valuable. Ask questions of patent attorneys that you know if you're thinking about that career. I really enjoy talking to people early in their career that are thinking about making that transition and hearing about their experience and why they're interested in it, what they're nervous about. Ask those questions, develop that network. And then, like I said, the path in the US and the UK and Europe is a bit different, but I would then seek out the best law firm training that you can get. That's really critical, I think, to being successful in-house is having a really solid foundation. In-house legal teams are typically staffed leanly, right? And we don't have a lot of bandwidth for training somebody that has no experience, right? So you go to the law firm to get that good experience and interact with clients. Like ISO was a client of mine, and then that's how you sort of land that job at the startup or at the big pharma company.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's sage advice, and it shows how important and useful networking can be, whether that's on digital formats like we're doing right now, interacting with those people who've handily put in questions in the question and answer section, and also at conferences or forums or events in person as well. Thank you very much, Caleb. In the interest of time, I'd like to welcome the rest of the panel back on screen, please, if possible. And we'll just go through some of the questions that we've had in. So again, thank you all for your candor, really, in answering these questions. Looking at the theme that's coming up, as Melvin almost exactly identified, the predominant one, I guess, is around what qualifications you would need. Particularly, I guess we can only really speak to UK side of things, and this is not legal advice in any sense of the word. I guess I'll point that. I'll be the first to say that. But I guess that what qualifications and certifications might you need following coming out of university to become a patent attorney? Melvin, perhaps you'd be able to shed some light on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So I believe when I joined the profession, and I think it's still the case now, bachelor's degree was the minimum in a STEM subject. Companies tend to look for at least a 2-1. I think the field is getting a lot more competitive now. So having your master's, having your PhD does give you an advantage. So a STEM degree, you don't need the legal qualifications in the UK. That can be done on the job, and your employees tend to put you through that training process.
Thank you. So exactly what Caleb was just saying, I guess, in terms of that you don't, in the UK, I guess you don't need to have that legal side beforehand. It's more the scientific background that you need, and then you learn the legal side on the job. And, in terms of thinking about that, that's I guess the firms might be the ones kind of footing the bill, if you like, in terms of your training and investing in your career as well. And that's really great to hear. So I guess Laura, from there's a question specifically for you in terms of the examiner role. What do you think gave you the edge for when you were applying for these opportunities in IP? Do you think it was, for example, your examiner experience, and maybe you could shed some light on that?
Yeah, I think that definitely helped. I mean, I was interviewing when I was doing my thesis, I did interview for a couple of attorney jobs as well. So it's definitely possible to kind of get through. It's just, it is a competitive field. Like I was involved in our last round of recruitment for a trainee, and there's kind of over 500 applicants for one place. And on paper, they're quite similar. So it is quite difficult. I think the key is probably applying to a lot of firms, but also doing a research on the firms that you are applying to and tailoring your cover letter and CV to the firm to kind of show that you're actively interested in them. Like one of the CVs we saw actually had like the core values of one of our competitor firms listed, like saying, oh, I'm particularly attracted to working at your firm because blah, and that kind of doesn't then go along with them saying they've got a good eye for detail. So I think it's, researching the firms that you're interested in, kind of working out why you want to work there, and kind of sending out good quality applications essentially and also evidencing your actual skills. So you might say, oh, I'm good at communication, but just kind of add an example of how you've shown that, like, oh, I've presented at this conference. Examples, I think, and increasingly in the field as well, internships and shadowing are becoming available. Like a lot of firms are offering open days, or sometimes like a 1 or 2 week kind of summer placement as well. So again, they're quite competitive to get into, but you may as well apply and try and kind of get your foot in the door that way. Or other things you could try is kind of attending networking events. So there's a great organization called IP Inclusive, and they kind of run free events, and attending things like that can really just show that you're genuinely interested in IP and kind of anything you can do to set yourself aside. The other thing, I think it was Caleb that mentioned kind of chatting to people beforehand. So if you can find some sort of mentor, there's a website called Careers in Ideas that kind of hooks people up to early career professionals in the patent profession, and they'll be happy, most of them, to chat through their career stories or like review your CV as well, give you some kind of pointers and tips on interview practice and things like that.
Thank you, Laurie. No, that's great to hear. And I guess related to that one, there's a question come in about This is more of an open question, I guess, not just for yourself, but how does a prospective applicant go about this? Do you just fire off these speculative applications to IP firms with the caveat that you then assign the right values to the right company? Of course, that's yeah, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot there. But or do you go for, or do you, is it better to wait for like that kind of yearly crop of recruiting drive? What would be your recommendation? That maybe Caleb, you might want to jump in on that one. What's better, to kind of just fire it off into the ether, or to wait until that kind of targeted recruitment drive?
I mean, in my experience, it's a numbers game. These positions can be very competitive, and so I think you have to set your pride aside a bit and just start applying. Now there may be nuances with particular firms, but I would say generally, in my experience hiring, it's unfortunately a numbers game. So sending out lots of applications, doing your best to stand out, and then waiting to hear back.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anybody else got anything else to add? I saw a lot of nodding going on, so that seems to be the way with most jobs, to be fair, at the moment as well. So yeah, it's definitely a numbers game. And I guess thinking about that in terms of, I know you've all touched on experiences and translational skills that you've picked up along the way that can make you stand out a little bit. Elizabeth, and it was interesting that both you and Laura mentioned the YES scheme as well. I know that it's a fantastic scheme for young entrepreneurs. Do you think that really set you apart and gave you that edge in terms of looking for that role when you finish your PhD?
Yeah, definitely. So unlike patent attorney, I guess, there's not really formal qualifications that you can do. So I can see there's a question about that. There are, once you get into sort of tech transfer roles, there are sort of registered tech transfer professional type certification you can get, but it's not mandatory, and it's not I don't know how widely recognized it is. So I definitely think things like biotech, yes, are really good in terms of helping you to speak some of that language, so that then when you apply for those entry level jobs, you can understand what they're talking about, but also be able to uh, demonstrate that you've got some of that insight that it would be needed for the job. And then the other thing I would say is, if those kinds of things aren't open to you, so that particular competition is PhD students and early postdocs, I think, so from academia. But if you can get involved in, if there's things going on in your lab where patents or collaborations with companies are going on, try and get involved in those and look at contracts and things like that, and really understand that kind of legal language is quite important for those sorts of roles.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. I guess one thing to address the elephant in the room, I guess, from an education point of view, is that everybody on our panel has got PhDs. Would you say that is a requirement? I know, Melvin, you've spoke about requiring a 2:1. Is it the case that it says it's a 2:1, but in really you kind of need a PhD to become, high up in the patent firm or in business development, or is it more about the skills that you pick up and you learn along the way? Perhaps Melvin, you might want to address that.
I, I wouldn't say you need a PhD, but I do, and I think it's been said a couple of times, it's getting competitive now. It's hundreds of people applying for one role. So any way you can stand out, whether that's your educational background, whether that's your stuff you do outside the role, is just as important, I think, to show that you don't sit at home doing science all day. You do other stuff. Anything like that can help you stand out, I think, will definitely help.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, it was a bit of a loaded question, I guess, from my end. But yeah, I think it's always a question to address the audience. It's always a question we get with these kind of webinars, from no matter what career sector we focus on for the day, is, do I have to have X? Do I have to have Y? And often the answer is no, but it helps stand out and everything. And that is true. But I think, as Melvin rightly said, it's there are lots of different ways that you can stand out. And just as Elizabeth was saying, if you're doing a master's and you were like, I do not want to do a PhD, or I can't afford to do a PhD, or it's not the right thing for me, there are other ways in which you can stand out. You can volunteer for things. You can get involved with organizations, for example, like Elric, to pick one off the top of my head, but go along to conferences, meet people. Caleb was saying all about that importance of networking as well, and how it's meeting with the people that give you those kind of the leg up in terms of your career as well, and having that advice and mentorship that's really important. And that's probably just as valuable as having a particular degree route, because it's all about the transferable skills and all about the people that you meet along the way. I will just say there is time for probably one more panel question. One more question from the group. I know that we've answered most of them, but I guess just to wrap things up, if anybody has any questions that they think of after the event and wanted to reach out to you all, are you happy for me to pass that on for you to answer? Would that be okay with you all?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you all so much. Well, in that case, I think in the interest of time, because this call will end very abruptly at 1 o'clock, if not, I will close the session here. And I just want to thank Caleb, Laura, Elizabeth, and Melvin all for your time. I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for your active participation. Hopefully, you've been able to get a lot out of this session. Come along to Elrig events. We look forward to seeing you all in person. And yeah, thank you again to the panel for your time.
Thanks all. Good to see you.
Take
Cheers.
care.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.